right, let's get going. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for giving up an hour of your morning to talk about transnational education. My name is Josh Freeman. I'm Policy Manager here at HEPI, the Higher Education Policy Institute. Hopefully you know a little bit about HEPI if you're joining us on the webinar, but we're the only think tank in the UK exclusively dedicated to higher education. You can find all about us, our research and various other things that we do on our website. It's very exciting to be here talking about transnational education. And this is in the context of the Labour government, which has introduced a review of its international education strategy last autumn. We're eagerly awaiting the results. And today we're looking at one area of interest for the review, which is transnational education. That is people studying for UK qualifications abroad. It's also very timely, given the announcement just in the last few hours of some reforms to immigration, including changes to the graduate route visa by the Prime Minister, which we might touch on today. But certainly there's a few questions that our panelists might engage with. What role should transnational education play in the UK's international education strategy? What are the risks and benefits of expanding transnational education? And what about regulation? Have we got the regulation right? We're delighted to be hosting this webinar this morning in partnership with Lancaster University. And Lancaster is a leader in transnational education, campuses in, I think, Malaysia, Indonesia, Ghana, and Germany. I think Andy will be able to confirm for me in a moment, but we'll be hearing from Professor Andy Schofield, Lancaster's Vice-Chancellor, in just a second. So a little bit of housekeeping. Our 5 panelists will speak for about 5 minutes each, and that will take us up to just after midday. And please do keep to 5 minutes if you can, so we have lots of time for audience interaction. We'll then have a Q&A, and we'll try and finish on the dot at 12:30, as I'm sure people will have places to be. And then in that audience Q&A, we'll be taking questions taking your questions that you've put in the Q&A window. So please put any questions in there you'd like to see, and please upvote questions that you'd most like to be asked. I'll be going to the questioners who've had the most voted comments, and we'll go to you and we'll ask you to unmute and ask, or we'll unmute you and we'll ask you to ask your question directly to the panelists. So it's not just us talking. Fantastic. So without further ado, let's turn first to Professor Andy Schofield. Andy is Vice-Chancellor at Lancaster University and is co-chair of the UK International Campus Alliance network, among the duties. So, Andy, it's great to have you. Over to you.
Josh, thank you very much indeed. Thank you, everybody, for joining the event this morning. And we do want to engage with as many questions as we possibly can on this. Josh gave a nice introduction, but not quite complete in terms of Lancaster's position in transnational education. Josh, you mentioned 4 out of 5 of the ones that we do, but we also have a joint institute in China, as well as our partnerships with Somewhere University in Kuala Lumpur, our work in Ghana in partnership with TAG. We've got work in Leipzig, in Germany, where we partner with Navitas. And most recently, we've opened our Indonesian campus activity, which is in partnership both with Navitas, but also with Deakin University. And that sets the set of 5. And in terms of what we're going to talk about today, which effectively around the questions of, is this an important part of UK strategy and soft power? I'm sure we'll hear an awful lot about it. But for Lancaster, whose goal as an institution is to be a globally significant research-intensive university, what we do in TNE is a critical part of both growing our influence, being able to operate internationally, both in terms of education and increasingly now in research, and build our reputation through doing both to high quality, as well as augmenting the alumni network that we have through our partners here. And we operate across the world in roughly 2 models. One is a sort of branch campus model, where effectively with a partner, we are operating a branch campus area. We typically, as a university, choose not to invest in the capital there. What we do is bring education, often bringing staff And the model of each of our 5 is slightly different, but has a common denominator of bringing a quality Lancaster University education and increasingly research to bear. And that's the branch campus model, but we also work with a sort of validation model which is in particular our partnership with Sunway University in Kuala Lumpur. And we're very lucky to have Elizabeth Lee, who's going to be on the panel later, who is a key partnership and oversees the education group for Sunway. And it's great to be joining a panel with her. So in terms of why we do it, it helps us build capacity. It gives us a strategic global view in our teaching and our research. And some of the benefits that we see are mutual growth. So for Lancaster, now over a third of our students are getting Lancaster University degrees, but never setting foot in the Bailrig UK campus, at least not as part of their formal degree structure. But increasingly we're seeing student mobility as an important part, and students do come for summer schools or subsequently come for later study like postgraduate work. We're also found it grows our global reputation, and that's illustrated by events that we're able to run. We were one of the first universities to hold an event in the Malaysian Parliament, again through an alumni connection with the Speaker of the House there in the House of Representatives. And similar things when we launched the Indonesia campus, a big splash activity. And we're actually seeing the benefits for that, not just in brand and reputation, but it's actually also driving student choice for those students who don't want to stay in country and do want to travel overseas. Having said all that, there are risks and considerations around TNA, which we may touch on in the questions. Viewing this as an educational export, there's a risk that misses the local needs. And that's why for us working in partnership has been so important, prioritizing local integration and building capacity in country with academic parity. And their research has played an important part too. Navigating the regulatory requirements is often a hurdle, and it's great to have QAA represented here. Of course, we do this not exclusively for financial considerations, but that forms an important part of it. And in terms of balancing the reputational risks that we have perhaps around culture clash, that needs careful handling. But this is a webinar about the future. And in my view, that future will be of research integrated and also sustainability driven TNE, where you're generating both income as well as impact. I've stressed the importance for us of doing it in partnership. And one thing that we're a part of, which is the UK International Campus Alliance Network, UK-ICAN. And if your institution is not a part of that, I would strongly encourage you to think about doing it. It's really a sort of self-help group in a certain way for universities that are either thinking about or actively involved in TNE. And it's having great benefit, not just in our global brand, but also for our local students here in the UK, as they get to take part in global international classrooms, meeting students virtually, and that is actually motivating students to travel overseas to some of the partner campuses where they can study the same module in a very different context. So I suspect my time is nearly up, but it's not just a vehicle for delivering degrees for us. This is a transformative global partnership which speaks to our civic engagement as well as our education and research. And Lancaster University, as illustrated, I think, by this session today, is very keen to collaborate and share good practice and to learn from others who are exploring in this territory. So with that, perhaps I will stop and hand over to other speakers, Josh.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Andy, for that. A very useful overview. And I think that's an excellent jumping off point for many of the things that we'll be talking about the rest of this webinar. We'll turn now, please, to Jazreel Go. Jazreel is Country Director in Malaysia for the East Asia Hub at the British Council. She also leads the East Asia Consulting Team and is an expert on socioeconomics research and marketing consultancy, and also set up the British Council's Education Intelligence Unit. So lots of expertise to draw on there. Lovely to have you, Jazreel. Over to you.
Thank you, Josh. Hi, good afternoon or good morning, everyone. So I will share my point of view from two angles. One is from the student and then partnership. So I think that in considering what's next in terms of TNE, we need to consider a very significant shift in student expectations. I think today's learners and students are looking for more than just access to quality education. They want a lot of flexibility, personalization, and relevance. So they expect education to fit into their lives and not the other way around. So I think they are also demanding credentials that carry global weight. So that is why um, that demand for ranking is always there. So I think, and another observation about students is that many of them still value the cultural immersion that comes with studying abroad, but there are also others that are opting for digital experiences that offer global exposure without the need to relocate. So I think this tension between physical mobility, digital accessibility is something that TNE must navigate very, very carefully and prioritize as well. And besides students, I think in terms of my observations on TNE partnerships, I think we are seeing from where we are in Malaysia, we're seeing quite a lot of shift from very traditional kind of bilateral agreements to more complex multi-layer ecosystem. And this often involves not just universities, but also companies, employers, and even governments. And what we're seeing increasingly is we are seeing innovation coming from the global south, regions that were once primarily recipients of transnational education are also becoming hubs of innovation and co-creation. And Malaysia is definitely one of those regional hub that is becoming more and more attractive to students across this region. So I think this is a powerful shift and one that really challenges the traditional flow of knowledge from north to south. Yeah. And all of this, I think, raises important questions around policy, around quality assurance, and as education crosses borders, I think we need regulatory frameworks that can keep up to these changes. Including how we use technology, which I think isn't just a tool for delivery, but also reshaping pedagogy, assessment, and even the nature of partnerships. So I'll just like to end by saying that I believe if we are now thinking about what's next and what TNU would be evolved into, I think we are at this crossroads. And I think the next phase isn't just about scaling up TNE, and it's not just about being strategic, because I think these are all basic hygiene factor. I think what Andy said just now is really important, transformative. I think it's about being able, it's about being transformative, and I think it also requires a paradigm shift where the mindset of any institution needs to shift from I'm a UK university with international partners to I'm a global university with international presence. And that shift, I think, it's really significant, a significant evolution, because it involves embracing a global vision. It involves integrating diverse perspective, leveraging technology, changing the whole way your university and your institution is set up, and also, more importantly, making a positive impact on global communities. And I think this transformation, this paradigm shift is really essential for meeting the needs of students, especially students that are increasingly less Western-centric, and actually ensuring the continued relevance and impact of UK education on the global stage. So thanks, Josh. I'll end there. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Dasrell. Very interested to hear about that shift, and I'll be interested to hear what the other panelists think about that too. Let's now go to Griff Ryan. Griff is the head of transnational education at Universities UK International. He leads the policy work on TNE there, and joined the UK as an intern in 2018 and has worked in a number of internationally focused roles since, covering TNE, but also international students and outward student mobility. So Griff, fantastic to have you.
Thanks very much, Josh. Sorry, struggling to unmute there. Yeah, great to be here this morning with everyone with such a great panel. As Josh mentioned, I work for Universities UK International. Many people on the call will know us, but we represent 141 universities across all 4 nations of the UK. I'll start maybe speaking a little bit about the international education strategy, which the previous iteration of which has been provided a huge amount of support actually for TNE. So I think what we'd like to see in the refreshed version of the IES is a continuation of that, of the government taking a more proactive role in being supportive of UK TNE. We'd perhaps like to see that framed in a slightly different way. So framing around growth and promoting growth in TNE, but specifically sustainable growth, so growth that can last over time and that provides benefits to all parties involved. And also thinking a little bit about the non-financial benefits of TNE as well, and how we can frame them in such an important document as the IES. So thinking about how TNE provides benefits in terms of meeting global skills needs, in terms of addressing gaps in provision around the world, and in terms of contributing to the Sustainable Development Goals. So as Jazreel mentioned there, around being transformative, and how the UK's TNE offer as a whole can achieve that. In terms of kind of solidifying government's role through the IES, we'd like to see kind of continued promotion of UK TNE activity and continuing the really effective government-to-government work that has been going on through the work of Sir Steve Smith, the international education champion, that's helped to lower barriers to TNE in partner countries around the world. It would be great to see that continue in the future iteration of the IES. Thinking a little bit about regulation as well. A lot of our work is focused on policy and regulation and making sure that the UK system for TNE that underpins it is fit for purpose. And one of the reasons that the UK is a world leader in TNE is partly due to the regulatory and quality system that we have in the UK and the way that the sector is set up. So institutional autonomy being a real key pillar of the UK's higher education system has allowed for innovation and experimentation over the years that has allowed UK universities to tailor their provision to global contexts, and that has been one of the key factors that's driven the UK as a partner of choice. Along with that has been the UK's reputation for high quality and also for robust governance as well. So we need to have a regulatory and a quality system that strikes the balance between maintaining those high standards, but also maintaining institutional autonomy and giving institutions the freedom to operate, to innovate, to try new things, and to work with partners in diverse contexts as well. So in that sense, we think that minimizing burden is key, which is why we've really welcomed the decision taken recently by the regulators across the 4 nations of the UK to move towards a joined up, coherent data collection system for TNE, maintaining the kind of aggregated data approach, but improving that slightly rather than shifting to a much more burdensome individualized data system, which would have increased tenfold the data burden on providers. And also there's still kind of work to be done in this space as well, thinking about how particularly the OFS might want to apply regulation around freedom of speech, around requirements, around training and requirements in the E6 provisions as well. We need to make sure that those are tailored in a TNE context so that they work within the legal frameworks of the diverse jurisdictions that UK TNE operates as well. So I'll stop there. I'm really excited to come on to discussion later on around some of the risks and benefits as well, but some of the other panelists might cover that as well. Thanks, Josh.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Griff. Really interesting and looking forward to coming to much of that. Before we go on to our next panelist, do please make sure that you're putting any questions that you have in the Q&A. We'd love to hear from you. We have plenty of time for a Q&A, so plenty of time to cover lots of questions from you today. So please do put those in, and as they start coming in, please do upvote the ones that you'd like to see as well. Let's go to Professor Elizabeth Lee. Elizabeth is CEO of Sunway Education. which she's led since 1992. When it was just one institution. It's now a group of more than 20, from kindergarten all the way up to university and alternative education pathways. Elizabeth, it's fantastic to have you.
Thank you very much, Josh, for having me. Just to give everyone a bit of background as to what Sunway is. We opened our doors to our first students in 1987, and our tagline then was overseas education begins here in Malaysia. And that was also in response to the government's call for the private sector to come in to partner with the government in providing education, especially at the higher levels, to the students, because it was in a way a reaction to the economic downturn at that point in time, where the students were not able to afford to go overseas for their education. So when Sunway began, or rather opened its doors in 1987, we offered something known as twinning degree programs. And this twinning basically means that the program of our twinned institution, the first year of that is being offered on the shores of Malaysia at Sunway. So we had with us a number of institutions from across the world, and the institution that we partnered with in England was actually Leicester University. And I must say then that Leicester was doing something which was quite out of the box, and they were the first old university in those days to dare to take on this route and offer this twinning arrangement with us. And I must say that they did suffer at that time a fair bit of criticism as to why an old university may want to do that. They could understand if a new university or the polytechnics at that point in time may be interested in doing something like that, but not quite one of the older established universities. So that was Leicester University in 1987. It was a wonderful partnership which saw us transferring law students and engineering students. These were the two areas which we twinned in. They would do at that point 1 year in Malaysia at Sunway, and then continue on to the second year, the third year, and graduate. And in the case of the engineers, as time went on, to do their MEng in the fourth year. So that was the original TNE arrangement that we participated together with the UK. And then as the years progressed, in 1998, when our government opened up to the idea of having branch campuses be set up in Malaysia, our government was looking specifically at renowned universities across the world to set up their branch campuses in Malaysia. And we were the very first to set up the first branch campus of a foreign university in Malaysia, and this being Monash University in Malaysia. And Monash was an old partner from the days of the 1980s when we first opened. And so it was a natural progression to move from twinning arrangement to a joint venture arrangement, whereby Monash, together with Sunway, agreed to set up this branch campus of Monash in Malaysia. And so this partnership went on until a few years ago, where Monash felt that it was something where they feel very at ease in Malaysia. They were very happy with the way the branch campus has grown and developed, and they were very happy to now take a bigger stake and in fact take over. So that was the next stage. Then as the branch campuses were set up, the Malaysian government also had changed its laws to allow for private universities to be set up. I mean, it had to be changed because the the branch campuses were effectively private universities as well. And so when that happened, Sunway University, or rather Sunway College, applied to be upgraded to become a university, and that was granted to us. And so in 2006, we not only became a university college, because that would be the step before university, but it was also the time when we knew that, we've worked so well with international partners, in Australia, in the UK, and in the USA, that we wanted very much to continue with our partnership, because we find that leveraging on our partners have done us a world of good and done our students even much better. And hence, I began looking for a British university who would be able to come in and partner with us in this different concept at that point, and model of transnational education. And this would be what we eventually called the validation model. In other words, to partner with us, to help us to a great extent by validating the degrees that we were offering, and which then became dual degrees. So our partner being Lancaster University, who was very happy and we were very happy that they were happy to partner with us in this manner, whereby they could validate the degrees that we were offering. And they developed into what we now call dual degrees. In other words, when the students graduate from Sunway, they actually would graduate with 2 degree certifications, one from Sunway University, and the corresponding one is from Lancaster University. And we started with, and we still have these degrees, and they will be in the area of business, accountancy, psychology, I think in the arts, and definitely in the sciences as well. So it's a great wide range of subjects where we partnered with together with Lancaster. So that happened in 2006, and it's been a wonderful development that has flourished for both institutions. And next year we will be celebrating our 20th anniversary in partnership together, and so that has fared us well. And in the meantime, Sunway then, or rather the Sunway Education Group, having established Sunway University, we still have our colleges with us. As George mentioned, we have quite a number of institutions. So our colleges very often were offering pre-university programs and also professional courses. But aside from that, we have also, as an education group, ventured out to look at alternative education models. So one of our latest development is we've partnered with a French educational system known as École 42. And École 42 basically is a coding school, international group of coding schools, and very, very revolutionary. No lecturers, no fees, and no curriculum. In fact, the curriculum is very much gamified, and there's a lot of peer-to-peer learning. So that is, in fact, a different direction that we are venturing into. It doesn't mean we are going to do everything with them. It's just that we are just widening our net and casting it out to see how else we can provide for our students. So I think that's just an introduction. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you, Elizabeth. Fantastic to hear about how Sunway has changed over that period, and I'm looking forward to hearing more on that too. Our very last speaker is Eve Alcock, who is Director of Public Affairs at QAA, the Quality Assurance Agency, where she leads the organization's policy stakeholder relationships and communications work. So just a small brief there. And he's also a fellow at Aspen UK's Rising Leader Fellowship Programme. So great to have you, Eve. Over to you.
Thanks, Josh. Hi, everyone. It's great to see so many on the call and to be part of such a great panel. A little bit of sort of QAA context, I guess, to kick off. So QAA runs a UK-wide transnational education scheme that was commissioned by UK and Guild 4 years ago. It supports providers to enhance the quality of their TNE provision. At the moment, Meta and SFC require all Welsh and Scottish providers to be part of that scheme. We've got Queen's in Northern Ireland as a member, and lots of English providers are also members. So the scheme's membership accounts for about 70% of UK transnational education provision. Lancaster are also members. So a lot of QAA's expertise in this space comes from running that scheme, but it also comes from the review work that we do at the moment in the devolved nations, but going back sort of 20 years across the UK, where as part of the sort of cyclical review process of universities, we look at how providers are managing their partnership provision, which includes TNE. So that's where kind of, I guess, QAA is coming from on this. I've got sort of 3 main reflections on where next for UK TNE. And the first is that I think in a lot of ways, TNE feels like the sort of land of opportunity for the HE sector at the moment. If you were to take sort of purely, I suppose, cynical view, as pressure is growing on sort of sector finances, there's sort of, you know, more scrutiny and crackdown on domestic partnership provision. And then in the white paper this morning, obviously, there's some changes that will likely impact international student recruitment. TNE feels like a sort of good area for growth for UK HE at the moment. But even if we set that cynicism aside, TNE is also a sort of land of opportunity because of how crucial the HE sector is in building the UK's soft power, international reputation, and kind of, I suppose, economic growth as well. From this perspective, government departments like DBT, for example, rely quite heavily on the higher education sector's contribution to its ambitions, and therefore the sector is seen as a kind of core partner in that activity. It's striking, I think, that the sort of same can't necessarily be said between the dynamic, for example, between DFE and the sector. And so that kind of reliance that DBT has on some of this activity from a kind of growth perspective and that international reputation means that actually TNE is sort of safeguarded in a way as a land of opportunity for the sector, because there's that kind of buy-in and reliance from that perspective. My second reflection, perhaps predictably, is around the vital role that quality and perceptions of quality play in kind of UK TNE's success and indeed achieving the ambitions of any sort of future international education strategy. Now, throughout QAA's work internationally, whether we're partnering with sort of governments or agencies or working with providers, we see firsthand just how important the perceptions of and actual quality of UK higher education is in facilitating, I guess, UK HE's position on the global stage that facilitates things like TNE partnerships. One of the key ways that those perceptions are formed is through local UK TNE provision within countries sort of on the ground. And so the higher education sector has a reputation to uphold there, and that responsibility for maintaining that quality and promoting that quality should not be taken lightly. I think it's also really important, and this is the other, I suppose, factor in perceptions of quality from international partners, really important that the funder regulator bodies across the UK not only are working together because the UK is seen as a sort of single entity from international partners rather than that kind of devolved system, but the quality systems that are in place need to instill that international trust in partners so that the public information that's in the public domain about the quality of particular sectors is transparent and plentiful as well, so that we are paving the way for UK universities to be able to start new TNE partnerships on that basis of quality. So the sector needs to not take its eye off the ball when thinking about the quality of provision. And that's easier said than done in a policy environment that is sort of increasingly incentivizing that kind of rapid growth for sort of financial sustainability for UK-HE. But therefore, and I think Griff said this as well, for QAA, the focus of TNE and the new international education strategy needs to be on stable and sustainable growth. So growth that can keep up with the quality of it, or quality that can keep up with the growth, I should say, but also highlighting mechanisms that help enable that, like QAA's TNE scheme. To finish, I just wanted to touch on some sort of thoughts I've had recently around the risk that the sector might be facing about domestic perceptions in the UK of TNE provision overseas. I think there is a danger, or we need to be conscious of the risk, that there might be a sort of PR problem coming down the line on UK TNE provision. Now, we've seen, I guess, domestic partnership provision, particularly franchising, in the press recently. We've also seen historically this idea of concerns about fairness between, for example, international students and home students. There was press attention within the last 12 months, worries about whether or not international students were taking the places of home students, for example, at UK universities in the UK. There is a danger, I think, that it becomes increasingly difficult for the sector to justify UK university investment in TNE overseas, whilst, for example, there are also lots of news stories about cuts to domestic courses, for example. So when I was thinking about this pre the panel, I was also mainly sort of triggered into thinking it because of Reform's success at the local elections. They are occasionally polling quite well in Wales ahead of Welsh Senate elections. And I was thinking of that sort of policy in their party is becoming more of a, I suppose, a national voice. Then we might start to hear rumblings or headlines of this sort of unfairness of investing in UK higher education delivered for the benefit of students overseas, rather at the expense of home students in the UK. And then actually I saw Jackie Smith's words in the Sunday Telegraph over the weekend, which were literally that universities should be focusing on the core mission of higher education, rooted here in Britain, its young people, its economy and its society. And so actually I do wonder if that risk is perhaps not as far away as we think it might be. So I think the sector needs to rapidly sort of ask itself how it can mitigate that risk proactively, communicate what the benefit is of TNE back to home students and to kind of UK higher education as a whole, so that they don't have to defend themselves and get on the sort of back foot of being accused of taking their eye off the ball of delivering for home students on home campuses at the expense of TNE overseas. So yeah, potentially a little provocation or food for thought to lead us into the discussion. Thanks, Josh.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Eve. And if anything that Eve has said or any of the other panelists have said you find particularly interesting or provocative, or you have further questions about, please do put those questions in the chat. We've had a few in already, and we'll go to these now. So panelists, if you wouldn't mind putting your cameras back on, as most of you have now done, and we'll get straight into those questions. So a couple of anonymous questions, then I'll go to Gemma Long, who's got a couple of questions in there as well. On the anonymous questions, we've had a very quick one. Is there an online forum for the network that Andy mentioned? So possibly, Andy, that's one for you to jump in on. No. Another anonymous question, and we'll go to the panelists. Do you have a quick answer to that, Andy?
So there's not an online forum at the moment. We're running a number of events that people can sign up to, but we will look at that if that's something that people will value. So
great,
we can get back to participants with that.
Fantastic. All right. Now, in terms of what I'll do is I'll take a couple of questions. We'll go out to all of the panelists again, and then we'll come back for another round of questions. So you've got time, but while the panelists are answering the first round, to add in your any further questions that you've got. So one question here: do the panel have any thoughts about the migration white paper out today? Will it make people less likely or more likely to access UK higher education in their own home country? So something about the government's announcement this morning. A couple of questions from Gemma. So Gemma, we'll come to you and we'll unmute you. And it's up to you which question you pose. We might have time to come back and answer your second question, but just one of those for now.
Hi there, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, if I had to pick one, I'd probably pick the first one. I mean, I hope we can sort of, well, I'd welcome the discussion, but I hope we can acknowledge that, you know, some regulation is necessary and useful in sectors from time to time. And I guess the question is about how do we provide a regulatory approach that adds value and doesn't hinder provision, while acknowledging that regulation can be a useful tool.
Excellent. Thank you. And then I have a question as well. It is necessarily, as TNA arrangements become more complex, the student experience becomes something that's maintaining that sort of experience, maintaining that academic quality becomes more difficult as you have campuses across the world. How can, this is my question to the panelists, how can institutions make sure that the quality of the academic and the student experience is maintained across a global range of campuses? Interested in your thoughts on that. Shall we go in reverse order of the panelists? So let's jump back to Eve, and I think probably the regulation question might be for you.
Yeah, sure. So, I suppose on Gemma's question, I would just emphasize the importance of devolved nations, both governments and funder regulators, working really closely together. Gemma and I were actually in Indonesia together, talking about the sort of UK landscape in February, and something that really struck me was that in the Indonesian language there isn't actually a word for the UK. They use the word which is effectively like English. So the idea that that we need to be cognizant that international partners are experiencing UK TNE as the whole of the UK, even though there's those different regulatory environments in all of the nations. And particularly, I suppose, for OFS, as they're working on their new integrated quality model and what that might look like, thinking through that as an opportunity to collaborate and work with the other devolved nations to make sure that those systems have a kind of readability and a coherence, and make it easier for providers to collaborate with international partners without too many regulatory barriers, I guess I would say. The other thing that I would say is that baseline regulation is really, really vital, but I think one of the things that is that we can be doing more of is making sure that providers are supported to enhance the quality of the provision in TNE above that regulatory baseline, that kind of continuous improvement, that adapting to new technologies like AI, sort of lifelong learning and kind of micro-credentials, whatever that might look like, and actually speaking to quite a lot of Jazreel's reflections on how student bodies are changing globally and their expectations. And that's why a kind of a scheme that looks above the baseline that is UK-wide, like QAA's scheme, is so important. And I should just say that the scheme, it was a 5-year scheme initially. It comes to the end at the end of next academic year, I believe. And we're doing lots of thinking at the moment about what the UK-wide mechanism should be that sort of comes after the first iteration of that scheme. And so there's a huge opportunity for that to play a really complementary role, and as a sort of signal to international partners as well, that UK universities are really committed to quality and delivering the highest quality experience of students in UK higher education, no matter where that is delivered. I'll leave the white paper to others to answer.
Thank you. Elizabeth, any reflections on those questions?
Yeah, I'd like to address the question, will the new migration white paper, which came out today, which I must confess, I don't really know what it's about, but this idea of whether anything may make people less likely or more likely to access UK higher education in their own home countries. I mean, when we offered this opportunity, it was to allow for more students to be able to access British education, or, you know, or to be exposed to British education. And we have time and again found that students very often would like to spend some time, if not all the time, in the partnership that we have with Lancaster has been very good, because while it allows the students to completely finish their degree at Sunway, but it also does offer the opportunity for them to do 2 years of a 3-year degree course. In other words, after a year, they can move on over to Lancaster, or they can go for exchange program where they can be experience the culture and basically be exposed to you know, the mother campus. So there are many different opportunities for them to still go to the UK. And I don't think that that is going to dwindle in any way, because I think students are still interested in the overseas exposure and experience, but it may make a difference as to how long they may be able to spend in the UK.
Very helpful. Thank you. Griff.
I might take the question around regulatory approaches. I think one of the things, in addition to what Eve mentioned, is around kind of speaking the language of international partners, and when it comes to quality systems and the way that they're set out. So it's something already that OFS are working on, but and in the OFS strategy for 25 to 2030, around realignment to ESG, I think could provide really significant benefits in terms of adding value to the UK TNE offer as being kind of back in that globally recognised quality system. But yeah, I'll stop there. I'm conscious of time. There's lots of questions.
There are now. We'll get to those in just a moment. Before that, we'll go to Jazreel and then to Andy.
I think I'll take both questions. I think on the regulatory side, in terms of approaches, sitting here, I used to work in China and now in Malaysia, and I think one of the things that UK regulatory bodies can really add value is actually to be very open and to meet up with counterparts in overseas country, because it's actually about communicating and giving assurance on how the UK goes about in terms of managing its quality assurance and things like that. And these are areas which are very much appreciated by external partners. So going out there and being open and transparent about what we are doing in the UK and sharing them with our external partners, I think those are things that are really important in order to add value and give confidence to UK qualifications or UK TNE abroad. On the issue of migration, I think, to be honest, students do not start by, when they apply for any programs or qualifications, they do not start by thinking I'm going to migrate there, especially when they are doing TNE. That's not how they think. That's not the thought processing. Okay, they are looking for that. Like I go back to, they're looking for that global credentials. They are looking for that quality, and they are looking for what kind of experience are you able to give me. And therefore, I think what we really need to do is to be thinking about what's the added value of our program, and how we giving that student experience and enhancing that student experience. Nobody makes decision. I can definitely assure you, nobody makes decision to go into a TNE by thinking that they want to migrate to the UK. Yeah, thanks.
Excellent. Thank you. And Andy.
Well, lots of things to touch on that people have already said, so I won't amplify them again, other than to say, of course, what you're getting with UK TNE is the quality of a UK educational experience, and that's why back to the point that Eve made, the importance of demonstrating both the reputation and the quality of what's offered in country is absolutely critical. And get that wrong and you're lost. On that point about the white paper, and I haven't had time to digest it, at naive level, you might think, oh, well, by putting the barriers to move to the UK up, it'll amplify the attractiveness of TNE. But I think we need to be extremely careful there, because first of all, one of the biggest risks, and this is now touching on Gemma's question, I think, is the risk of global competition. And any negative story about UK universities or the climate and culture within the UK does in the end reflect on the reputation of the universities, whether they're overseas or the overseas activity or not. And so I think we need to be quite careful about the language that we're using in the UK, because we are a welcoming country, and TNE is an open door to a high quality education, but also a cultural experience. And you are going to have a degree certificate with a UK university's name on it for the rest of your career and your life, and maintaining both the reputation of your university brand goes hand in hand with the country's the perception that people have of the UK. And just to touch on one more thing, which was Eve's provocation, I think, about the perception of people investing heavily overseas and missing out, therefore excluding the UK student. Of course, the reality of what we do at universities is effectively one of cross-subsidy, where actually we are cross-subsidizing home students through some of the international students who are coming here. And very few universities, I can imagine, opening international activities overseas in a loss-making mentality. I mean, as I stressed with Lancaster, actually we don't invest any of our own money or capital overseas. We work with a partner who takes that risk, takes the risk of the estate, and we bring our reputation, which is why, back to as I started and as Eve stressed, the quality and reputation is the thing that we put on the line, and we guard that with everything we possibly can.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Great to get your rapid responses to that, and maybe we'll have some further reflections once we've all had a chance to digest that. So a whole lot of questions have now come in on the Q&A. Let's try and get as many of them as we can, and then we'll go back to your panelists for one final set of reflections. So David Mills has a question. David, will bring you in and unmute you, and could you ask your question for us, please?
No, we actually, Josh, Andy just answered it. It was basically saying there is a cross subsidy. I just think the case needs to be made strongly by universities that actually they're not being distracted and putting money, UK public money, into overseas projects. Quite the opposite.
Yeah,
but thanks, Andy.
more. Thanks, David.
Yeah, fantastic, excellent. Okay, let's go to, apologies for pronunciation if I get this wrong. Is it Shona? Shona will unmute you, and if you could ask your question.
Hi, sorry, that's been just unmuted, and that was the right pronunciation. Well done. So my question was really around, as we, as the sector, sort of continue to navigate an increasingly competitive and complicated landscape, as we've discussed, what new models of TNE, beyond some of the ones that have been discussed by the panel, do they think offer the sort of most strategic value for us long term, and how should we as institutions be thinking about how we adapt to these opportunities, and looking at our structures and teams with the financial challenges that others have outlined within the UK? So sorry, it's a bit of a mishmash of a couple of questions together, but any thoughts would be much appreciated.
No, very useful and very helpful to get us thinking longer term as well. And now let's go please to Lucy. HEPI's own Lucy Hare's Director of Partnership with us. So Lucy, if you could ask your question.
Hello, it's kind of a follow-up to David, really, but I'm just, what are the solutions to getting the right messaging out there? It feels like we're a little bit on the back foot. We've got the three leading political parties now in the UK are all, it might be too strong to say gunning for international students, but this is it seems to be fairly aggressive policy lines around bringing students into this country. So if TNE has, something to offer without those consequences, then what more can we do? Are we getting it right in the publicity drive? Specifically, what can we do? We don't say when Jaguar Land Rover are exporting cars elsewhere, oh my goodness, there won't be enough cars for British people. How can we get this better? How can we all help each other?
Excellent, fantastic. There's a few more. I'll read a couple more out, and then panelists feel free to engage with these in your remarks. So another one from Gemma: what do you consider the most significant risks to successful UK transnational education in terms of delivering value to students? So a question there about risks and the value that we deliver. And then an anonymous question about the OFS, the three conditions. So many people touching on the condition will know that this affects universities in England, that it's a metric, a way that universities are assessed, including continuation rates and progression rates. Is this a high risk in transnational collaboration, which might affect their registration? Interested in the question, interested in the panel's views on whether the B3 condition will affect the willingness to collaborate. So let's go in the order we started with please. So we'll go back to Andy, and if you could speak, maybe we've got a minute per panelist. So maximum efficiency, and if any final remarks, if you could include those as well.
Okay, well, you fired lots of questions out. I could speak to some of them. I think the question about innovation is really interesting. What new things are going to be happening? So, I mean, one of the things that we've done most recently is a three-way partnership with an Australian university in TNE, and now that it's unusual. Why did we do it that was specific to Indonesia? It's because we believe the Indonesian student actually looks primarily to Australasia for education, and so by partnering with an Australian university, we were able to offer something effectively a dual degree of the type that Elizabeth was talking about some way, but with a Deakin Lancaster degree. So that's one form of innovation. Well, I'm trying to look at some of the other questions if I can pick one off. The risk, as I mentioned before, I do think it's actually the global competition. We tend to be quite introverted and think it's all about the UK, but that students are looking all over the world, and we've got to promote ourselves. And exactly the point that Lucy made. I think part of the answer is working with DBT, as was mentioned, that as the UK tries to grow its trading relationship with the rest of the world, it has to see the TNE as actually part of that soft power mix. That around the world you've got little pieces of UK industry, creative industry, knowledge generation that is a partner and is a stepping stone for in-country development if you do the right partnerships and working there. So lots that could be said.
Excellent. Yes, I wouldn't expect you to answer all the questions. Just picking one or two, as you did, is superb. Jazreel.
Just on the issue about metrics, I think having worked in all these various countries, what I've observed is actually the local partners are really prioritizing success of students. So they do want to prioritize continuation rate. They do want to prioritize progression rate. So it's not a risk at all. Actually, for the local partners, there are also local regulations which they need to adhere to ensure that the student success. So I think we are all aligned in that sense, in terms of wanting to see student being successful. So I'm not sure if there's a risk there. I think the risk is when you first look for a partner, you got to really find the right partner that aligns with your objectives and really wants to grow with you. I think that's the key. Once you find the right partner, I think you're already halfway there in terms of success. And I just want to end with my thoughts that I think TNE, going back to my earlier point, I think TNE is not just about a pathway for students to study or about exporting our qualifications. I think it's really going to be a very important part of UK soft power and building our profile. It's about building meaningful, equitable partnerships, and for the UK to be part of a truly global education ecosystem. I mean, if we are not in this game, we will be very, very irrelevant in another 20 years' time, and sustainability of UK education would be at risk, because the truth is this is an increasingly less Western-centric world. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you. Griff, your very succinct response.
I'll touch on the innovative new models. I think there's also, kind of leaving that aside because that's a big question, you can also do lots of really interesting things within existing TNE models in ways that you can kind of innovate on existing models of franchising or joint and dual degrees or campuses. So think about links with industry to boost employability and opportunities for graduates. Think about bringing in technology and innovative models of pedagogy as well. There's lots of room for maneuver within the bounds of the already established models.
Excellent. Elizabeth?
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to answer Shona, and Shona was a bit concerned about whether there are new models coming out, but in fact, we really have gone beyond franchising and even branch campuses with a partnership that we have with Lancaster, where we are talking about dual degrees and validation of degrees, etc. But the thing is that one of our partnership with Lancaster, which initially focused on teaching, actually that partnership has now evolved to also include research collaboration. And I wanted to highlight our joint research, Future Cities Research Institute, or the FCRI, and it is actually based in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and that builds on the existing strengths in both Malaysia and the UK, and in this particular case, it's Sunway and Lancaster. And the FCRI actually focuses on studying city development in a holistic way, incorporating sustainable development agenda and planetary health. So I just wanted to show that, you know, beyond that, there are other things that are happening, which are important, bringing the countries together. And not only at students at the higher education, maybe the 20s and maybe the 30s, but you know, more, should I say, much more mature students, and also beyond that, researchers and industry.
Fantastic. Thank you. And Eve, you have the final word.
Cool. So I'll just pick up on Lucy's point with what I think is an action plan to protecting the sector against this potential PR risk. The observation I would make is that this is as much about optics and perception as it is about the reality. We all know the reality, but that often doesn't fly when it sort of extends beyond the sector and into the sort of public sphere. So what I think the sector needs to be doing now is transparency over the TNE that does go on, how it's delivered, that it is being delivered, because I think that was something that franchising was a little bit hidden away, and so it was less well understood, it was more prone to misunderstanding. So transparency, being really obvious and upfront and demonstrating that commitment to the quality of provision as a sort of hygiene factor, that this is being done in a really good way and is really considered, and sort of that being absolutely central. And then finding ways to communicate how TNE benefits your home students, might be internationalization at home initiatives, that kind of thing, not just the financial, which is obviously important, but also TNE delivering on things that the government currently cares about, right? So strengthening global ties in a period of sort of instability geopolitically, and building soft power and supporting growth as well, and that kind of holistic narrative.
Excellent. A superb note to end on. Thank you very much, Eve, and thank you very much to all of our wonderful panelists for a really interesting discussion today. Particular thanks to Lancaster for your support, without which the webinar wouldn't be possible. And thank you as well for everyone for coming, for your questions and your engagement. And do follow up with us on the HEPI website. There's plenty on this topic and lots of others if you'd like to get stuck in any further. We always welcome blog contributions on all sorts of topics. So if there's anything you can get off your chest after today, please do so. Thanks very much, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.